Guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I created this tumbler right here. Now, I know it looks a little bit difficult, but I promise you guys, it is so easy. This style has been so popular lately, but in my personal opinion, it seems like so much work. Now, don't get me wrong, I am trying to see if I can do a video on this type of style with full glitter, but in the meantime I decided to do a little tutorial for this kind of cheat style tumbler. Now this tumbler is a done with full water slide, and as you can see, it is still super pretty, and yes, there is glitter under here. So without further ado, if you want to see how I created this cheat Tangram tumbler, then keep on watching. I'm mixing up 5 ml of Counterculture DIY fast set resin. I'm going to be putting this on the base of my tumbler, and I'm using that as my adhesive to apply the glitter. Now I'm only using about 1 to 2 ml of resin here, and I'm going to just be smoothing that out on the entire tumbler and sprinkling my opal glitter over the base of the tumbler. The glitter I'm using today is called Dream. It's a really pretty opalescent glitter that you can find at sugarandspiceglitter.com. I'm going to just take that and sprinkle it evenly all over the entire base of the tumbler. So once I have really good coverage, I'm going to go ahead and let that cure. Now because I use the Counterculture fast set, it's going to take about 2 hours before I can go in with the top coat of resin. I'm actually going to be using Counterculture's artist resin as my top coats because it's not recommended to use fast set over white glitter. So once it's cured for 2 hours, I'm going to go in with about 2 coats of Counterculture's artist resin. You do want to make sure that you resin until your tumbler is smooth. You want to make sure that you have a nice smooth surface before you apply your water slide. While I'm waiting for the tumbler to cure, I move on to my water slide. So as you can see, I've already printed out the image on my water slide paper, and I will have in the description down below the kind of paper that I use. Once I've printed it out and I've let it dry for a couple hours, I'm going to tape it to this cardboard box. We're going to take it outside and seal it. I use 2 types of sealers, and the first one I'm going to go in with is this Krylon Color Max Clear Sealant. I'm going to spray that all over the entire image, and I'll usually go in with about 2 really good coats of sealer. And in between each coat, I let them fully dry. So here you can see I did the first coat, and off camera I did the second coat. But once it's fully dry, you should see a nice shiny finish. Once I have my shiny finish with the Krylon, I'm going to go in with this Plasti Dip Glossifier. When I started using this glossifier, I noticed a really big difference in my water slides, and I find it's really helpful, especially if you're the type of person that seems to have issues with your water slide cracking or stretching with just regular Krylon or Rust-Oleum sealer. So I use this Plasti Dip Glossifier, and I go in with a really good coat, and I only do this one time. You can see I'm using a very generous amount. And then yeah, once your tumbler is resin till smooth and your water slide is nice and shiny and dry, now we can move on to the next step, which is applying our full sheet of water slide onto the tumbler. First thing I'm going to do is trim up the edges of my water slide. Once I'm done trimming those edges, I'm going to just measure out my water slide onto the tumbler. Now I am using this 20-ounce skinny straight from Craft Haven, and it has no taper, so it should fit on pretty easily and evenly all around the entire tumbler. So I'm just sort of visualizing how I'm going to be laying down the pattern to see where it's going to line up and how much I'm going to need to trim when I'm done applying it on. Once I'm pretty happy with how I'm going to be placing the image onto the tumbler, I now put that into this little basin that I have beside me. I'm just using a regular Tupperware with warm water. I did get this Tupperware at the Dollar Tree, and while I'm soaking my water slide, I'm putting a little bit of water on top of the tumbler. So I'm sorry I'm a little bit out of frame here, but what you see me doing is just putting a little bit of water onto the base of my tumbler to kind of get it wet, so that the water slide image slides on easily. You'll notice that your water slide is ready to transfer once it's moving off of the backing sheet. I do test it just to make sure it's ready, so you'll see me doing that a little bit before I go ahead and slide it onto the tumbler. Once my water slide is ready to be applied, I'm going to remove that out of the water, and I'm going to just wrap it with the backing sheet still on onto the tumbler. I'm happy with how it's positioned. I'm going to lift it up and start to slide that image off of the water slide backing. You can see that I'm kind of just pushing it up so that that water slide can attach onto the tumbler. And now I'm going to start removing the backing sheet off by just pulling it back and turning the tumbler at the same time, so that as I'm pulling off the backing sheet, I'm wrapping the tumbler. This part can be a little bit difficult, and it might take a little bit of practice, but one of the things that makes it easier to do is making sure that you have a really good seal on your water slide so that it doesn't begin to pull and rip when you're removing the backing. Sometimes if your water slide is not sealed good enough, you may get some pulls and tears, which is not a good thing, because then you're just gonna have to throw out the water slide and start again. So just make sure that you have it really nicely sealed off so that you can move it around and not have to worry about it tearing or pulling. As I'm removing the backing sheet away from the water slide and wrapping it onto the tumbler, I'm trying to smooth out the image as best as I can with my fingers. But after we remove the backing completely, I'm going to show you guys how I smooth it out. I have this little silicone tool on the bottom to the left side of the screen, and I'm going to be using that to help me get rid of the air bubbles and smooth out the wrinkles. So I do put it in a little bit of water to kind of help me smooth out that image, and you can see how I'm doing that here. Need to lift up that water slide, then you definitely can. And I'm just applying water onto the tumbler and using my little silicone tool to smooth out those wrinkles and get rid of any air bubbles that may be trapped underneath the water slide image. So where the image lines up, it does overlap a little bit, but I'm going to be going in with my X-Acto knife to trim that up so that it's not very noticeable. Now what I'm going to be doing at the top rim of the tumbler is just curling that over, and we're going to take care of that after we've added resin onto the tumbler. I'm going to show you guys how to easily remove that without having to snag or pull on your image. So in the meantime, I'm going to just fold that down so that it dries above the rim, and I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife to trim up that overlapping piece here in the back. You want to make sure that you have a really sharp craft or X-Acto knife, and I'm using that knife to trim up the overlapping piece of the water slide. Now I'm not doing it so that it's completely even, but I am leaving just a little bit of a lip there. So just make sure that you are very careful and you try to cut down as evenly and straight as possible. Once that's done, it should be fairly easy to just pull that piece up. Now I'm just going to go over the entire tumbler, wet it a little bit, and then use my little silicone tool to smooth out any bubbles or any wrinkles that may be on the tumbler. Once you're done, you're gonna just let that fully dry overnight and then apply your resin on top of your water slide. And you're gonna wanna go in with about 1 to 2 coats of resin over your water slide. And then I'm gonna show you guys how to trim up your edge. I have 2 layers of resin on top of my water slide. I'm going to show you guys how to trim up your rim. So you can see here that the water slide is still overlapping the rim, and it's cured onto the tumbler that way. So I'm gonna just take my little Dremel tool and I'm gonna start trimming up the rim. Now normally I would clean up my rim with like an X-Acto knife and just kind of cut that along, but because I'm using the water slide and I don't want it to rip or anything like that, I feel like the Dremel is a little bit easier to get a nice even line. Also, if you angle it down a little bit, like you can see how I'm angling my Dremel bit, it creates a small little lip in between the tumbler and the water slide image and glitter itself. So I'm just being very careful with how I'm trimming up my rim, and I'm just creating that nice little line there and drilling away that water slide paper and resin that may be stuck onto the tumbler. Now, once I've dremeled a nice little rim around the entire tumbler, I am going to go in with my craft knife just to peel up any resin or any little bit of that resin that's left on the inside of the tumbler, and I'm going to show you guys that in just a second. But I've been really into using my Dremel lately, especially when it comes to trimming around the edges of my tumbler. I just think that it leaves a really nice crisp line, and it's so much easier to work with than trying to cut off those bits of resin with using a craft knife. And then this way it's also safer and you don't risk like cutting yourself or digging the little craft knife into your resin. So yeah, that's how I do that part. Now I'm gonna go and grab my craft knife just to kind of get the inside. There's some resin and some of that water slide paper stuck on the inside of the tumbler. So I'm gonna just use my craft knife to scrape that up. Now, once that's done, I am gonna clean the inside of my tumbler. I'm gonna use acetone and a little bit of alcohol to clean up the rest of the residue that's on the inside of the tumbler. And then I'm gonna seal and finalize this baby with one more coat of resin. So in total, I finished her off with 3 coats of resin, 2 coats of resin to completely seal in the water slide, and then the final coat to seal in the job that I just did now with the rim. So after I'm done cleaning off the rim and all that good stuff, and I'm finished cleaning off the inside of the tumbler, I'm gonna go in with one last final coat of resin to seal that all in. And that's basically it. We're pretty much done. This one is pretty straightforward, and if you wanted to go in with like a name or some sort of quote, you definitely can. But just because of the type of design this tumbler is, I think it's just fine the way it is without a quote or a name, but you could totally add that if you wanted to. So once you're done cleaning off the rim of your tumbler, this is basically what it should look like. You can see how clean and smooth it looks, and there's just the tiniest bit amount of stainless steel there so that when you put in your last final layer of resin, it will seal everything in nicely. So yeah, that's what this tumbler looks like. In the next clip, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like completely finished. I'm totally in love with how this tumbler turned out, and it's a great alternative if you're the type of person that doesn't want to spend too much time doing a full glitter tangram. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, let me know if you're gonna try this little technique out with the water slide, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it. If you liked today's video, then please give it a big thumbs up. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.